In a world of podcasts, one rises in the night to destroy them all. The elder god in an ocean of noise, the Cthulhu of the airwaves. This is Spoiler Country.
All right, everybody, welcome again to another episode of Spoiler Country. Today on the show, we have comic book writer, film writer. He's done a lot of stuff. Joshua Starnes. You have seen his show Kalipari on Netflix, and now he has a book called The Box coming out from Red 5 Comics. So let's get the show on the road. Josh, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on here.
It's good to have you on, man. And also, I didn't ask before, can I call you Josh or do you go by Joshua specifically?
No, either's fine.
Okay.
I've never had a preference.
All right, cool. So have you always been a fan of comics? Because you kind of got this circuitously, right? You were a film critic before.
Mm-hmm. I've always, I was, and still am, and that is sort of how I got into comics. But no, I've always been a fan, been a reader since as old as I can remember. I started collecting. By collecting it, mainly, I mean, like, as a kid, I didn't really keep anything in good condition, but I just kept everything. I never got rid of any of my comics, and gradually, and just put them in boxes, and then more. I kept getting more and putting them in more boxes, and kind of gradually, by osmosis, started to find out about the collecting world, and was there when the big speculator boom happened in the early 90s, and kind of got dragged into it, but never really gave up my love of it. So, and at this point, I kind of worked in all the different parts of it. So I was a reader. I see
some behind you, actually.
That is, I've sold lots of it. They used to be much larger than this. But I still have them all, and I don't have a better place to put them in my office. So they're just sitting there, right? All the lawn boxes are sitting there right now till I find something better to do with them. And when the kids came, I used to be able to keep them in a bedroom, but then the kids came and, now they want their own bedroom and stuff. I can't just use that for extra storage anymore.
This is my man cave. You can't see, but on the other side, I have all my comics and crap like that. But it can't coexist with the rest of.
It needs its own. It needs its own space. But then when in college, I worked in retail. I worked for a comic shop for several years in Houston, about 4 or 5 years, and now for like the last 6 or 7 years, I've been co-publisher for a small independent publisher for Red 5 Comics. So I've kind of seen all the different sides of it, and I still love it. So I guess it hasn't driven me off yet. But I came into that through film writing. I met as a film reviewer. I met the person who would eventually be my business partner and co-publisher, Scott Chitwood. We were both reviewing films for the same site, and when he told me he was going to start Red 5 Comics in the mid 2000s, I was like, hey, so I've always wanted to do that as well. Sign me up, or if there's anything I can do to help. And I kind of worked with them on and off for a few years before I came on like officially as one of the owners and publishers in 2015. So That's 6 years
awesome.
ago now.
So what was your jam? What got you into it? What hooked you in comics?
I think it's probably the same thing that hooked me into film and got me and made that something that I spent a lot of time watching and a lot of time writing about. There's something about visual storytelling and the reading, and I'm a big reader too, so obviously just storytelling in general is a big thing for me. But it's one thing and no small thing to try to take whatever someone's written on a page and try to conceptualize that in your head. And depending on the book you're reading, some stuff that can be written is very evocative, but not very specific. So, there's no telling what it is you're actually coming up with. But visual storytelling, which has its own language, which you have to do for both film and comics, you have to be concrete. You have to turn your ideas into, even though there's a lot of room for a lot of strange conceptualization in comics, because comics can draw almost whatever the artist can come up with, and you can have some really great and really strange stuff in it. But something about that marriage of the image and the word is something that's always been particularly fascinating for me, and the kind of storytelling that I've always liked the best. And especially in comics, as I've read more and more of it, and we've seen over the years, it's expanded on and in a lot of ways become more cinematized. But at the same time, there's a lot of storytelling in comics that's very unique to it that you could not really replicate in any other media that I've always liked, from not just the big, really popular stuff from the major publishers and the fun adventure stories, but down to the underground comics of the 70s and the autobiographical self-published stuff of the 90s and the 2000s and today, and the kids comics of the old Duck comics and some of the old, and even the old top tier daily strips like original Flash Gordon and Prince Valiant and that sort of thing. I've just always loved all of it. My bookshelf of trades is very strange, and there doesn't seem to be any connecting tissue between all the different stuff on it, except that I like all of it.
I hear you. So before you started this book with Red 5, you have a show called Kalipari at Netflix. Kalipari, sorry, I'm saying that wrong. How did you get into that? And what did you take from it that you could then use in your comic story?
I got into that through comics as well. We had, I was a writer on Kalipari. It's someone else's show. I just wrote the episodes of it, and it was adapted from a children's book series, books for like 6 to 7 year old readers, about basically these magic ninja frogs that protect other frogs in the outback. And Netflix had already turned the books into a season of a TV show, and they're getting ready to do another season of a TV show. And I was actually speaking with the writer and executive producer about doing a tie-in comic at Red 5, which we eventually did. And I was doing a lot of brainstorming with them for what was going to be in that they liked, and that ended up, not all of it, but a lot of it ended up going into their notes for season 2 when they knew that there was going to be a season 2. And I asked them if I could write an episode, and they said, yeah. And at first it was going to be the first episode, but then I think it got to which I worked on for quite a while. And then I think it got into a situation with the train was rolling and it couldn't stop. So as soon as I turned in episode 1, they were like, great, here's the outline for episode 2, write that. Because we need this in like half the time, we need this in a week. And so they just kept handing me outlines. I just kept writing episodes until I got to the end, and there were no more episodes left to write. So that was interesting. That's probably not at all standard from my understanding, and talking with other people who've written in animation. It's not at all standard with the way a lot of it's done nowadays. A writer's room and more like large scale television, but that was very much my experience with it. And in a lot of ways, it was like writing my first comic script. There are limitations that you have to be able to, there are time limitations and space limitations that you have to be able to work around. You have to be prepared for, and you can't break them. You're not going to get more than 19 minutes of airtime in a given episode. So you've got to make everything fit into that. So you can't
you got to cut
pushing it. Yeah. And that, it's like editing is tough and self-editing is tough, but like editing by physical is kind of like how a standard issue of a comic book, you're really not going to be able to squeeze more than 28 pages of story into it. You're probably going to be doing less than that. I tend to set like a length of 24 pages for myself, and I'm always kind of fighting against it. Can I make sure that everything fits into this? What do I have to take out? What do I have to compress and condense in order to make sure it fits into that? And in a lot of ways, animation was the same, but more so. So I've noticed as I've come back to writing comics after working on that, in some ways it's a little bit easier to condense, but it's also something that's a lot more on my mind, and not getting myself caught out as much as I was. And I'm outlining a lot more and trying to know everything down to each panel, what's going to be in it before I start writing it, so I don't suddenly start running out of space.
Going through that right now. I'm writing a book. Issue 1 and 2 went through fine, no problem. I'm on the script for 3, and I know what needs to happen, but I'm going through the process of like, I have to cut this, I have to cut this, I have to cut this. Otherwise I'll have, 6 issues of a 5-issue miniseries. And I don't want to do that. Although it might be kind of funny to see on the cover.
It wouldn't be the first time, but yeah.
So tell me about the box.
It's an idea I've had that's kind of been percolating for a long time, and I've got a list of a bunch of different book ideas that have been sitting. I finished my first my first comic with Red 5 several years ago called Spook, and that came out in 2016. And I've spent a lot of my time since then working more on the business side of the company, and I've been wanting to get back. And I was working on Kalipari for a while because 10 episodes of TV takes a couple of years to actually do. So there was a lot of time spent on that.
Was that how you got your union card? Were you able to do that?
No, I'm still talking with him about actually getting my union card. That seems to be, it's more difficult. I mean, I think people know it's kind of difficult, but it's even more difficult than you might think. And there's some things get allowed and some things don't get allowed. And streaming has, because Kalipari was made just specifically for Netflix, and streaming has made all of that even more complicated than it already was.
Redheaded stepchild of Hollywood. Do you think, sorry to break in, in front of the box. You're in Houston. Is it hard to work within filmmaking and TV and all that while being away from it all?
It's not hard to do the work, but it's hard to make the connections. It's hard to get the work because I'm not physically in LA. I go out there from time to time and to have meetings, and it's been a little bit different in the last couple of years because everybody's doing all their meetings by Zoom, so I'm about as cut off as everyone else. But usually I'm not necessarily around to go to the meet and greets and to know everyone. So I make my contacts where I can and push them where I can, but I probably have a smaller pile to pick from. Once I do I get the work. It's not that different. I mean, we're not doing it face to face. I'm doing a lot of it by phone and by Zoom, but the work is the work. I'm doing a lot of it. I'm just, I've got all my notes and I've got all the meetings, and now I just have to sit down and write, and I'm going to do that. Whether I do it in an office there or I do it in my office here, it's the work is the work, but it's hard to get the work when you're not there.
Yeah. So you're not having to worry about like writers' rooms and stuff like that, correct?
Not much. We've had more something I'd like to get into at some point, but it's been, there was a version of a writer's room on Kalipari, but nobody was actually in the same city. The people, one person was in Boston, and one person was in Seattle, and one person was in Baltimore, and I was in Houston. So just sort of by the nature of the beast, everything was done by the phone, and everyone knew up front that no one was going to be in the same place at the same time. So that was fine. We just had lots of very, very, very long phone calls and a few video meetings, and maybe it got me pre-prepared for the pandemic when that just became what happened everywhere all the time, and it wasn't that strange because I was already doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I love this. Like, this is great. I wish I could do my real job like this because. I wearing board shorts and an old t-shirt. It's great.
Yeah.
But tell me about how you got the idea for.
I had, while I've been working on that, I still had a lot of comic stuff that I wanted to get back to, and I had like this list of 3 or 4 basic comic ideas. And in some cases they were to the point of like, this is the story for the first 4 issues or whatever. In some cases it's just like here's a really good title. Here's the main character. Here's the boilerplate pitch for it. But I didn't have like a story to go with it. But I had this stack of probably 5 or 6 of these, and I have been wanting to go back and I'm going to get one of them done, and I'm going to make it. I'm going to make another. It's been too many years since I've actually sat and made a series. So when the pandemic happened and I'm suddenly stuck at home for long periods, I said to myself that all right, now's the time I'm going to do one. And I had 2 dueling ones. One's called The Box, and then there's another one which I'm working on now. And I was going back and forth between both of them, working on the outline. The Box actually it originally originates as just sort of some spitballing I was doing with a good friend of mine, and we were talking about originally we were talking about like coming up with bad C-list and D-list superhero characters, like the kinds of people you'd find as members of Great Lakes Avengers. And my version was this guy who has a box that he just takes stuff out of, but he has no control over it, so he doesn't know what he's going to get out of it. And it could be something helpful or it could be something ridiculous. And that like was the original kernel of it that sort of sat there for a while. And I came back to, and I had from time to time, I would have like really good gags that I could do with the box that you could put things into and take things out of, especially for fight scenes. So I'd write them down whenever I thought of a good one. And like, I'm just sort of squirreling all this away for at some point, I will write a series about this person. And I'll have things for him that he can actually do with his magic box. And so things, I just over the years I kept adding little bits here and little bits there, and it was just sitting there in my notes. So when I got down to the pandemic started, and I had 2 outlines. I was like, I'm going to do one of these series, and I started working on one of them, and I got really far along, and then I got horribly bogged down, and I couldn't get any further. And so normally what I do when I have that kind of problem is I set it aside, I put it in a drawer, and I switch entirely over to something else that will clear my mind and have me not thinking about whatever that is. And then I'll go back to it fresh and see if I've got some inspiration or I've got a way out of the corner I was in. So I put that aside, and The Box was the one I wasn't working on. And so that was the one I turned to help me out with my writer's blocks, and I started working on it. And it started to come very quickly, probably because I hadn't actually been actively thinking about it for many years. So I had, kind of the kernel of the gimmick, but not the character or his story. So I started writing. Originally, I was like, all right, I'm going to write like an 8-page story that just introduces this person and his box and the world it lives in, and start to figure that out. And right away, like immediately, it's like, oh, okay, he's a private detective. He's a private detective, and his partner is this magic box. And I'm like, all right, well, we can do a private detective story. What do you have to have? Well, you got to have a femme fatale. You got to have some mobsters, and you've got to have betrayal and people backstabbing you, and a lot of double crosses. All the classic elements of classic hard boiled crime from the 30s, like Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler. So that kind of went into this original 8-page story very, very quickly. And from that, I didn't have a story, but I had the character. Like by that, I knew who Leo Bloom, who is the main character, who's the private detective who has this box. I knew who he was. I knew why he had the box. I started to have some ideas for what would happen in a full-length story. So that was like a really good exercise for figuring out at least who the main character was. And then I decided to all right, now I'm going to sit down and write this first story. And so one thing I have discovered is that like once you know who your main character is, the story, I won't exactly write itself, but it'll do a lot of the heavy lifting, because they'll start to tell you what they're going to do. And then that tells you like what sort of conflicts you can put in your way, what roadblocks you can put in your way, and how they'll react to it. A lot of my other series, I've planned them out heavily beforehand with a lot of plot. And then as I write them and I discover the characters, I have to go and change all the plot. And this kind of round was more, the character was, I knew what the basic problem he was going to face was going to be, which was that the original owner of the box was going to come back and try to take it from him. And he had to decide if it was worth the trouble of trying to keep it away from this guy, whether this guy would be bad news if he had it, whether that's really his problem or somebody else's problem. Does he want to ruin his life protecting this thing, or does he just want to get rid of it and move on with his life? So I knew what like the basic story was. And then he started telling me, well, this will happen and this will happen and I'll do this. And it just started to write itself very quickly. And I have to do many drafts. I have tended to do, like my last series, I think I did 4 drafts of each issue. And this issue, I think this series, only one issue did I have to do more than one draft of, or did it change like noticeably from my outline? It kind of went really fast. And in about 6 weeks, I had 4 issues written and was ready to start drawing them. So it went very quickly once it, mainly because I had the main character and then very, very quickly the main 2 characters. Once the main female lead was a lot more sketchily drawn, because I think in my original notes it was just femme fatale, and she was supposed to be a one and done. She was just going to like show up once and have one of those kind of classic Norse stories and then disappear. And then she quickly sort of defined herself and her role in the story, and the story started to change and evolve to find a place for her and have her be much more of a 3-dimensional character. And between the 2 of them, they basically defined everything that was going to happen. And I was just writing it down rather than having to stop and think about plot contrivances and all that sort of thing, which I've gotten myself stuck with in the past.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's always fun. And then you have to wait and sort it out. And because I don't know, I can't ever force myself out of that. Mm-hmm. I have to kind of have a shower moment. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep.
How did you go about meeting Raymond Estrada?
So he sent in one of the benefits of the ties to Red 5 is we get a lot of artist portfolios on a pretty regular basis. People looking for their first work and their breaking work, and we've worked with a lot of really like strong talent that way. Usually right before they go off. And do a lot of bigger stuff. So I have a nice, good portfolio. I did not have any idea what. Sometimes with some books I've written, I have a really strong idea in my head what the look should be and what kind of artist I'm looking for. It's like the book I wrote before this. I've always been a big fan of Eduardo Risso. And I really liked, and I was thinking about that when I was writing Spook. And so when I got the artist on that book was a guy named Lissandro Esterin, who's drawing Redneck for Image now. And his portfolio came through and it had like a lot of real, and I talked with him about it. He's like, yeah, I love Eduardo Risso. It had a lot of real strong Eduardo Risso tones to it. So I'm like, this is it. I think this is what this book should be like. And so it was kind of the same thing with Raymond, where, except that I didn't know what it was going to look like, was the big difference. I had no real conception of what the visual aesthetic was going to be. But then Raymond sent in his portfolio while he was in his graduating year, senior year at the Kubert School. He was like,
cool.
He sent in, he was basically like, yeah, I'm going to graduate this spring. I've actually got my portfolios going through its grading, review right now. But I want to send you in some stuff and show you what I'm working on just in case you guys have any series. And I'm like, as a matter of fact, I have just finished writing one, and I think your look is I didn't realize it until I saw it, but I think your look is the look I want. So I started sharing scripts and started telling him about the general idea of it, and he started working on it before actually he even graduated from the Kubert School. He was so that was really nice, and he turned in some blowaway work for really some of the first published professional stuff he's done, and I think he'll have a big name someday. I think that somebody will be very lucky, some bigger publisher will be very lucky to bring him on and have him do their books with him.
He's got a very solid style.
Yes, he does.
Like out the box, just like So yeah, you got a solid team on it. It's coming out in August, correct?
That's right. Issue 1 will be out August 18th. So it's available solicitation now in the Diamond right now. The order code is JUN 211783. So you can look it up in your previews catalog. Tell your local retailer you would like a copy. The issue 1 will be out August 18th. And it will be a 4-issue series. So we'll be running monthly from August until November.
Oh, nice. Are you planning on doing a collection or?
Doing a collection. I don't know exactly when, but I think I will know soon. So Red 5 had just signed a new distribution deal with Simon & Schuster earlier this year to be distributed in bookstores. So we're laying out a lot of our distribution plans for new and old trades for 2022 right now. So it's a matter of figuring out what goes where and when, and especially because a lot of that stuff you have to do, 8 to 12 months in advance. And we have both a back catalog of some series that I have been wanting to put into trade for quite a while, that now is a good time to do it, along with stuff that's coming out right now, like The Box. So it will definitely go to trade. I just don't know exactly when yet. But I will know by the time issue 1 comes out. So you will be able to look at Amazon and look at your local bookstore and see a date for release of a collected version by the time issue 1 comes out.
So do you mind if I ask you about your work with Red 5?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm really curious, especially just considering you haven't been with them very long. And as soon as you start the job almost, everything goes chaotic, which is not ideal. So what with the pandemic, not with
right.
So what was your impression when you first started out, and how did you guys navigate the opening of the pandemic when comics weren't shipping and stores were closing? How did you handle it?
It was really tough. I had I've been with Red 5 for a few years by the time the pandemic started, which is good. So at least I knew where everything was and how, who was in charge of what, who like our contact representatives at our different vendors were and things like that. But at the time of the pandemic, that didn't help a huge amount because nothing was open. And for us in particular, we were coming off of a banner year. 2019 had seen the release of Dark Age and Machine Girl, which were a couple of our highest selling series. That was actually we did a really, really good year. It's one of our best years ever in 2019. And we had some real momentum coming into the spring, and then everything just halted. So at the time that basically everything shut down, we had just gone to print with issue 1 of a new series that was supposed to be coming out in March, and it finished its run right in time for everything to close down. And we print in Canada, so everything has to come across the border, and the border was closed. So basically we had like an entire first issue of a new series stuck in a warehouse. It was finished being printed, but I didn't have any physical access to it.
That's awful.
Stores didn't have Diamond shut down, so nothing at a Diamond warehouse could actually could be sent out because they weren't running and they weren't running trucks. So a lot of small publishers, independent publishers like us, were looking for, and a lot of stores were shut down, but a lot of them were open and trying to find ways to stay open, but they just couldn't have anyone come into their store. So a lot of stores were switching to mail order services and internet mail order services, but they needed product in order to actually service that. And we were trying to find ways to get products to them without us being able to go to a warehouse, another warehouse being able to send out. And we were kind of going back on ideas like that for pretty much the entire 2 months that everything was shut down. It seemed an eternity at the time, although in reality it was only 2 months. And then slowly Diamond started trying to ship things out. But like a lot of businesses, they were shorthanded, and it was spent pretty much an entire summer sorting out all the details and the paperwork and trying to figure out what books were where, who had ordered what. A lot of stuff ended up having to go back and be reordered because a lot of stores were in totally different situations. They either, they were having cash crunches, they weren't having customers walk in the doors. And so we spent, basically 3 months navigating that, trying to figure out how to get material to stores and what stores wanted. And then we started to go through the life of in the pandemic, where you really, especially in retail, you see, and in comics retail, the requirement for foot traffic, because so many books, especially small press books, are bought by people browsing through the shelves and seeing something and going, that looks interesting, I'm going to try it. And when that doesn't happen, people will still buy the normal franchise titles, but a lot of other stuff doesn't get bought because people aren't coming into the stores. They're calling the store and saying, can you wrap up this month's Spider-Man and Batman, and I'll come do a curbside pickup, and that's it. And so stores, are having to carry a lot less of everything except for their core books that do their most sales, and cut far back because they don't have foot traffic either. And that turned into a really tough year for everyone, on top of which we are not having any face-to-face with any readers. We're not going to any conventions or any of the normal outreach stuff that we would be doing. We're trying to do a lot more podcasts and trying to do outreach we can, taking in, working with virtual conventions. We hosted a panel for the San Diego at Home last year, and we've been doing some more of those. But it's hard to reach people and even with everyone trapped at home, there's so many things to look at on your computer screen. It's hard to get people to tune into those the way they might if they buy a ticket and show up in person. So it was really trying as much as possible to reach out to as many readers as possible, and seeing just the effect that had on books that went from really hot to okay, and then it just became kind of waiting out the wave until there was a vaccine and things could start opening up and people will start actually going back to something like normal activities, which is seeming like in a lot of ways for the comics market is still more towards the end of this year and really into next year, because there's most of the shows are not going to be in person. And I think that tells you something also about expectations for foot traffic into retail stores as well. And everyone's trying to build that back up. So now we're all kind of looking to 2022 and being able to be direct, face to face with readers and connect with them the way you have to.
And fans are itching for it too. Like, I'm on Twitter, I'm on the message boards on Discord. people are ready to get out there, and so that means that people are ready to get out there and ready to spend money. So
in the middle of this, you have a wholesale dismantling of the distributor situation that we've been trained to deal with for the last 20 years, and completely overhauling it as Diamond is no longer a monopoly. They still have most of the retail network, but they're not a monopoly. And we've got the growth of we're starting to work with other distributors, which is something that was always hit and miss, and doing a lot of direct to retailer selling, and a lot of that's happening more and more. And Diamond's important, but it's not the end all and be all that it was even 24 months ago, and that is having a big shift that affects everyone in many ways.
Has that been advantageous to you guys as a smaller publisher, being able to hook up with Simon & Schuster?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet, but I think it will be. It sort of depends on how things shake out. Depends on what the overall retail appetite is. It's always good to have more distributors and more salespeople moving your product, but then I've still got to reach out to, whether it's a bookstore retailer or a comic store retailer, being able to reach them and find the kind of product that they want and be able to push towards them. And it depends on how many different publishers are doing that at the same time, and it depends on the strength of the market. We're still coming out of what really was a recession. We're still people coming back to work and starting to have expendable income again, and that's got to keep happening before everything else will kind of catch up to that. And we're still waiting on that. It's happening, but it's happening slowly.
So you guys right now are one of several small press, companies that are just killing it right now with the books and with, solid teams. And it really says something when you guys are able to stand out among all those other people. So it's, I don't know. I'm really hopeful right now with how the industry is going, even though, we got kicked in the ass a bit during the early days of the pandemic. I don't know. I think we're starting to see a shift, but I'm sure it's
I hope so.
Yeah. So what exactly do you do? What is your job at Red 5?
I'm the co-publisher. So in a lot of ways, there's two of us who do most of the day-to-day, and it's split, but it's not heavily defined. So it tends to be whatever needs to be done that the other person hasn't done. But I do a lot of the operational stuff. So I tend to deal with the printers and the shippers, and with distribution. I do a lot with the retailers, but Scott also does a lot with the retailers, so that's kind of split. But I spend a lot of time talking with the different printers that we use, getting books actually physically made and to warehouse and to distribution centers, so they can go out to stores, and making sure that they are actually that orders are in and people are getting what they want. And then we have someone else who's doing a lot of the front end marketing as well. And then everything else sort of catch cans. So there's a lot of dealing with the retailers, making our own books. So I'm spending a lot of time, obviously, doing my own writing and dealing with my art team. And then for people who bring in creator-owned projects, which is about half of Red 5's output, is creator-owned material that we're publishing. So we split a lot of talking directly with the various creator-owned teams and helping them get their stuff ready and then getting that out to market.
So this is, based on your career path prior to joining as co-publisher of Red 5, it's much different from what you had done previously with film critic and writing for television and stuff like that. Has it been fun kind of using that, like, I guess, more organizational part of your brain to?
Yeah, it is when everything goes well. We have a really good year, and and we have where stuff's coming out that people want to read, and we have especially when there's big hits like Riptide or The Dark Age, and there's a big demand for it. That's awfully fun, and trying to figure out ways to get things to people and find new ways to get people interested in books. When it works, it's a lot of fun. When it doesn't work, it's intensely frustrating, and it seems like there's no end to it. But I do like it a lot. It's probably one reason why I've spent more time doing that the last several years than doing my own writing. I think the one downside of it is it doesn't always leave me a lot of time for my own writing, I haven't put out as many books over the last several years as I had at the time originally planned. I'd be like, I'm going to do a book a year, and that has not happened.
Yeah,
But trying to get back on that horse, starting with the box. So it shouldn't, not going to be another long 5-year hiatus, or not quite that long, but hiatus between next series. I'm already hard at work at the things after this, but Opening the Box is a nice, good return, and it works for a lot of people, and then it'll leave them looking forward to what comes next after that. But first, I have to get through that. So I got to get through the summer and the fall, actually getting it out in front of people. And then, you always read your own stuff, and some stuff you think works, some stuff you don't think works, but you have your ideas for it, and but you never really know until other people are actually reading it, and either something that you thought was subtle turns out to be extremely obvious, or something that you thought was really obvious nobody gets, or something you thought was funny that nobody laughs at. So I'm anxious to see what people actually think of it once they can get their hands on it.
Awesome. Yeah. And as somebody who thinks very critically about film and I'm sure writing as well, is it hard for you to get over that when you're writing? Is that?
Yes, not on this one. This is one of the benefits of this writing. It wrote so fast that it really did a lot of that for itself, and I didn't have to. It has definitely been a real issue with, just probably one of the other reasons I have not turned in haven't done as many series as I would have liked to by this point, because I have been so slow in writing, mainly because I have done exactly that. I have seriously overthought things, or thought that problems were larger problems than they really were, or worried too much about things that, in the long run didn't matter. It's one of the benefits of having a couple of books out on shelves, and I can see what people react to. You can really see, like, oh, that thing that I was anguishing on for 6 months didn't really matter. So there's no need for me, and I could have just gotten past it faster. And one of the benefits of this, and I'm very interested to see how people take it, because it will be one of the books that I have not done that on. One of the few books I have not done that on, and not like way overthought things while I was trying to do it, and see if that makes it more fun to read or less interesting to read, if it loses something or if it gains something. But that's definitely something I'm trying to learn from it.
Yeah. And I'm sure sometimes it's, you get in your own way with your, but it always fascinates me with people who actually, have that. I can watch the dumbest movie and be very happy. I'm not a smart person. I'll admit that. My wife is very smart. People that think critically about stuff, I don't know. It always fascinates me that, they're able to, sit through a stupid movie and enjoy it sometimes. And, also when the act of creation, because you're having to put yourself out there and, spitball stuff until you get it right. And but I always like to ask people what we want to keep the local shops open. Do you have any local shops you want to shout out? Yeah.
I'd like to shout out to Space Cadets Collection in Texas. Collection? That is the name of it. Space Cadets Collection by Jen
nice.
King. That's my local shop down the street from me, and I live in a suburb of Houston called the Woodlands. And Space Cadets is up here in the Woodlands. So anybody who's looking for a really good store, check it out. It has a heavy online presence, giant store, which got almost anything you can think of, run by Jen King. And then also Bedrock City Comics, which is in the heart of Houston, inside the Loop, which is my store for a long time, until I moved too far away, and it took too long to just drive there and back. That's actually where I worked when I was in college.
I was about to ask if that was.
Yeah, that was. I still have a lot of fond memories. I think they're the biggest store in Houston, and one of the biggest in Texas now. They have like 5 locations, including a giant warehouse in the middle of downtown Houston. Heavy in the Golden Age and Silver Age presence. The owner of the store, Richard Evans, is a longtime Golden Age and Silver Age collector, and is big into that area. And so it was always interesting seeing just some of the amazing things that would come through there. But Bedrock City Comics, if you're in Houston looking for a great shop to check out, definitely check them out. Space Cadets and Bedrock. That's what has served my comic needs for many years now.
I have a question about being a dad and being creative. Mm-hmm. I have 2 kids.
Until they go to sleep.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, how's that work-life balance? Do you ever achieve it? What have you done to achieve it?
Well, it helped a lot. Well, being at home all day when the pandemic started, but not entertaining them because they were having to do school stuff. But definitely harder during the summer months finding out. But I do a lot of stuff at night after they've gone to bed. So I try to spend as much time with them as I can when they're up and about, and play with them as much as I can. And then I try to catch up on stuff after they go to bed.
I've fallen asleep on my laptop many times.
That happens. That has happened. I don't sleep much. So
yeah.
You have to give up something. It mostly ends up being sleep.
Awesome. So I want everybody to go out and check out The Box, coming out in September, August
18th. Look for it. I'll shop near you August 18th.
Awesome.
Tell your store now that you want it.
And what was that code again? The order code?
JUN 211788.
You have to make up a song with it.
Not off the top of my head. That is probably hitting the limits of my creative ability.
I did so many mnemonic devices when I was in college, and now I'm just like, my brain is shot. I can't.
738. Oh, I've been saying it wrong this whole time. So 211738. So everyone remember the correct one. JUN 211738. This is why I should never try to do things from memory, because as I get old, my memory gets shot and I'm bound to say something terrible. But look it up, order it from your local retailer now. We're going to be doing several limited run retailer variant covers that you'll start to be seeing on social media in July and August. So if you're really looking for collector's items related to it, there's going to be several coming out. So keep your eyes out. You follow it on social media, #The Box Comic or at The Box Comic. And you can follow me at Josh Starnes Film. And as I have something about the box every day, and you will be sure to see some sort of advertisement for it.
Nice. I'm looking at your Twitter right now. Yeah. You guys go out, get the box. Josh Starnes, it was lovely having you on, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, you have a good one. Enjoy your summer and stay safe out there because there's still idiots.
Yeah.
All right, man. Take it easy, brother.
You too.
All right.
Spaghetti! And we're back.
That's right. We are back. Back in the saddle again. Well, I hope you guys really, really enjoyed that as much as we did making it for you. And if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, you got to go check out Spoilerverse.com, because at Spoilerverse.com, we have a plethora amazing directors and artists of all walks of life, and editors and writers. And oh my God, are you a lover of comic books like we are? Then there's so many amazing people from the comic book world over at Spoilerverse.com. And I highly implore you to go there and check it out.
Yeah, and while you're there, you can check out all the other podcasts on our network, like Bridging the Geekdoms and Funny Book Forensics and Haphazard Adventures and Nerds from the Crypt and so many more.
Misery
we put out
Point
episodes
Radio.
all the time. Go check all of them out. And check out all of the reviews and previews and articles we have going up every single day for you. Every day on Spoilerverse.com for you to check out, to read, and to love, and to like, and to comment. We have a store link. You want to help support the site? You can do it two ways. One, go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/spoilercountry. Or go to our store link in the middle of the site there and get a t-shirt, a face mask, a hoodie, something, look fly as hell, and help support the site when you do that, because we get $1 or $2. And, maybe you want to talk to us. If you do, you can do it obviously on all the socials. But if you go to scpod.us/Discord, you can join our public Discord server and come chat with us all day long.
I couldn't say it better myself, dude.
There you go.
You just mouthed out a ton of information at once. And really, I hope you guys enjoy what you're hearing, because we're working our butts off to bring it to you.
We are.
I guess there's only one left thing. One left thing? Yeah, I'm going to go with it. There's only one left thing left to do.
What's that?
In an oceans of podcasts,
We are Cthulhu.
as Cthulhu compels you to
Spaghetti. Open the mind.
and read more.
Spaghetti.
Do you listen to podcasts that sound like this? Hey, welcome back to the Super OK Podcast, where our audio sounds mediocre.
Or do you prefer podcasts that sound more like this? Crisp, clear, fun, easy to listen to, and full of awesomeness? Well, then you should check out Spoiler Country, hosted exclusively over at Spoilerverse.com.